The Galactic Council's frustration. The great chamber of the Galactic Council stretched across 3 kilometers of polished crystal floors. Representatives from 237 different species filled the massive space with their varied forms and sounds. Some floated in specialized atmosphere bubbles. Others clung to the walls with sucker-covered limbs. And a few existed as pure energy patterns dancing in containment fields. Ambassador Zekthara of the Vraxian Confederation stood at the central podium. His blue-scaled hide gleamed under the artificial suns that lit the chamber. Around his neck hung the ceremonial chain of his office, each link representing a successful first contact with a new species. Today he spoke about the one species that refused to be contacted. "Fellow beings of the galaxy," Zekthara began, his voice carried by translation devices to every corner of the vast hall. "We gather for the 847th time. Yet one chair remains empty. One species continues to ignore our calls for unity and peace." A ripple of agreement moved through the assembled delegates. They had all heard this complaint before, many times over the past 3 centuries. "The humans of Sol 3, Zekthara continued, "have mastered faster-than-light travel. They have spread to dozens of star systems. Their technology rivals our own in many ways. Yet they refuse to join our great community of worlds." Counselor Thys of the Ethereal Collective raised one of her 6 arms. Her body shimmered like heat waves rising from desert sand. When she spoke, her voice sounded like wind chimes in a gentle breeze. "Perhaps they are not ready," Thys suggested. "Many species need time to mature before they can handle galactic politics. The humans may still be too primitive in their thinking." "Primitive?" Zekthara's laugh was harsh. "Their ships travel faster than ours. Their colonies span more systems than most of our member species control. They have built structures that dwarf anything we have created. No, they are not primitive. They are arrogant." General Core of the militant hive slammed his armored fist against his speaking platform. The sound echoed through the chamber like thunder. His insect-like features twisted with anger. 300 years of invitations, Core buzzed. 300 years of polite messages. 300 years of being ignored. Perhaps it is time for a less polite approach. "You suggest we force them to attend?" Thys asked, her voice growing colder. "I suggest we demand answers," Core replied. "No species has the right to stand apart from galactic law. If they will not come to us, we should go to them." The debate continued for hours, as it had in dozens of previous sessions. Some delegates argued for patience. Others wanted direct action. A few suggested that humanity might pose a threat if left alone much longer. Dr. Zan of the Scientific Collective had remained silent through most of the discussion. Now he activated his translation device and stood on his thin, stalk-like legs. His large eyes blinked slowly as he looked around the chamber. "There is something else we should discuss," he said in his quiet, measured voice. "Our long-range sensors have detected unusual activity in human space." The chamber fell silent. Dr. Zan rarely spoke, but when he did, others listened. His species had the most advanced sensor technology in the galaxy. "What kind of activity?" Zekthara asked. "Construction projects," Dr. Zan replied. "Massive ones. The humans are building thousands of identical structures in orbit around every world they control. Earth itself has over 1,000 of these objects in perfect orbital formation. Weapons platforms." General Core leaned forward, his compound eyes gleaming. "Unknown," Dr. Zan admitted. "The structures emit no energy signatures we can identify. They resist all scanning attempts. They appear to be completely passive, but their purpose remains a mystery." This news stirred the council into worried murmurs. Unknown technology always made the various species nervous. Too many wars had started when one species discovered something new and decided to use it against their neighbors. "How long have they been building these structures?" Thys asked. "Our oldest records show the first ones appearing 50 years ago," Dr. Zan said. "The rate of construction has been increasing. Based on current patterns, they should complete their network within the next few months." "A network of unknown purpose, built by a species that refuses to communicate with us," Zekthara summarized. "This is exactly what I warned about. Their isolation is not just rude anymore. It may be dangerous." The chamber erupted into heated discussion. Some delegates demanded immediate military action. Others called for more careful observation. The Pacifist Union insisted that the humans must have peaceful intentions, while the Security Coalition prepared contingency plans for war. Through all the debate, one fact remained clear. Nobody knew what humanity was planning. The mysterious structures continued to appear in human space, following patterns that made no sense to any of the galaxy's greatest minds. Ambassador Veltar of the Trade Federation had been checking reports on his personal device throughout the meeting. Now he stood and called for attention. "If I may," he said in his precise, businesslike tone, "I have been reviewing our trade records with human colonies. Their purchasing patterns have changed significantly over the past 50 years. How so?" Zekthara asked. "They have been buying massive quantities of materials that make no sense together," Veltar explained. "Quantum processors, antimatter containment systems, temporal stabilizers, and something called dimensional anchor points that they manufacture themselves but rarely trade. That combination could be used for—" Dr. Zan paused, his large eyes blinking rapidly as he processed the information. "I am not sure what that combination could be used for. The technologies should not work together. Unless they know something we do not," Thais said quietly. The implications of that statement hung heavy in the chamber's recycled air. The idea that a species might possess knowledge unknown to the Galactic Council was both exciting and terrifying. "We need answers," Zekthara declared. "I call for a direct diplomatic mission to human space. Full honors, representatives from all major factions, and a clear demand for explanation." The vote was closer than expected, but it passed. The Council would send a fleet to Sol System, not as conquerors but as representatives of galactic civilization, demanding to know why humanity continued to stand alone. As the session ended and delegates began filing out through various exits suited to their biological needs, many wondered if they were making the right choice. Forcing contact with a species that clearly wanted to remain isolated could lead to anything from peaceful resolution to devastating war. What none of them suspected was that humanity's isolation was not about arrogance or fear. It was about protecting every single life in the galaxy from a threat so terrible that even speaking of it might cause the panic that would doom them all. In distant Sol System, human engineers continued their careful work, placing the final warning beacons in positions calculated with mathematical precision. The countdown had begun and humanity could only hope they would be ready in time. The galaxy slept peacefully, unaware that their continued existence depended on a species they had dismissed as antisocial and primitive. Soon, very soon, everyone would understand why Earth had chosen silence over diplomacy, and why sometimes the greatest act of love is to bear a burden alone. For contact protocols ignored, the diplomatic fleet emerged from hyperspace at the edge of the Sol System, like a parade of lights against the dark. 12 ships representing the major powers of the galaxy hung in perfect formation, their hulls gleaming with ceremonial decorations and peace symbols that could be read by any spacefaring species. Admiral Zekthara commanded the flagship, a massive Vraxian cruiser called the Harmony of Worlds. Its crystal hull caught the light from Sol and threw rainbows across the smaller vessels nearby. The ship carried not just weapons, but gardens from 100 worlds and art from every major civilization. This was meant to be humanity's introduction to the beauty and diversity of galactic culture. Sensors show multiple human vessels approaching, reported Lieutenant Kess from the bridge's sensor station. They are not in attack formation. Good, Zekthara said, settling his bulky form into the command chair. Open all communication channels. Activate the universal translators. Let us make the best first impression possible. The approaching human ships were smaller than the galactic vessels but moved with surprising speed and precision. Their design was clean and functional, without the decorative elements that most species added to their ships. Everything about them suggested efficiency over beauty. "Incoming transmission," the communications officer announced. "Put it through," Zekthara ordered. The main screen flickered to life, showing a human face. The being looked young by most species standards, with short dark hair and brown eyes that seemed alert, but not particularly excited. She wore a simple uniform with minimal decoration. "Welcome to Sol System," the human said in clear, unaccented Standard Galactic. "I am Commander Sarah Chen of the Earth Defense Force. Please maintain safe distances from inhabited worlds and shipping lanes. Enjoy your visit." Zekthara blinked in surprise. That was not how first contact was supposed to work. Where was the ceremony? The exchange of gifts? The formal recognition of historic importance? "Commander Chen," he said carefully, I am Admiral Zekthera of the Galactic Council Diplomatic Mission. We come seeking formal contact with your government and people." "That's nice," Chen replied with what might have been politeness or complete indifference. "If you need to file a formal request for diplomatic meetings, you can contact the Department of External Affairs. They handle that sort of thing." "We have been sending such requests for 300 years, Zekthara said, trying to keep frustration out of his voice. "Have you? Well, I'm sure they're working through the backlog. These things take time, you know. Proper procedures and all that." Chen's expression did not change. "Is there anything else I can help you with today?" Zekthara stared at the screen in disbelief. This human was treating the most important first contact in galactic history like a routine traffic stop. "We represent 237 species across the galaxy," he said. "Surely that merits some level of attention from your leadership." "Oh, absolutely," Chen agreed. "Very impressive. Like I said, the Department of External Affairs handles diplomatic matters. I'm just here to make sure you don't accidentally run into any of our freight haulers or construction ships. Safety first, you know." The transmission ended. Just like that. No ceremony. No exchange of information, no acknowledgement that anything important had just happened. "Sir," Lieutenant Kess said quietly, "are all humans like this?" "I do not know," Zekthera admitted, "but we are going to find out." Over the following days, the diplomatic fleet observed human activity throughout the solar system. What they saw both impressed and confused them. Human ships moved in constant streams between planets, carrying cargo and passengers with clockwork efficiency. Construction projects of enormous scale were underway around every inhabited world. The mysterious structures that Dr. Zan had detected were clearly visible now. Each one was identical. A smooth sphere about 50 meters across, covered in what looked like sensor arrays and communication equipment. They hung in perfect orbital formations around Earth, Mars, Europa, Titan, and dozens of smaller colonies. "They are not weapons," reported Dr. Voss, the fleet's chief scientist. "At least not any kind of weapons we understand. They emit no dangerous radiation and appear to be completely passive." "Then what are they?" Zekthara asked, unknown. "They resist all scanning attempts. Whatever they are made of blocks our sensors completely." The humans continued their daily activities as if the largest diplomatic mission in galactic history was not watching their every move. Trade ships loaded and unloaded cargo. Construction crews worked on massive projects whose purpose remained unclear. Children could be seen playing in the viewing domes of space stations. Their laughter transmitted over open communication channels. It was all so normal, so peaceful, so completely uninterested in galactic politics. Counselor Thys tried a different approach. Her ship approached one of the human construction sites where workers were installing another of the mysterious spheres. She opened communication channels and spoke in her most diplomatic tone. "Human workers, this is Counselor Thys of the Ethereal Collective. Would you be willing to explain what you are building?" The response came from a worker in a construction suit covered in tool attachments. "Sure thing. We're installing a warning beacon. Pretty routine stuff." "Warning of what?" Thys asked. "Oh, you know, hazards, dangerous conditions, that sort of thing." The worker's tone was casual, almost bored. "Nothing you need to worry about, though. Just standard safety equipment." "What kind of hazards require 1,000 warning beacons around a single planet?" "The kind that require 1,000 warning beacons," the worker replied reasonably. "Look, I just install them where the engineers tell me to install them. You want technical details, you need to talk to someone above my pay grade." Another dead end. The humans were not hostile or rude. They were simply uninterested in explaining themselves to anyone, even representatives of the galaxy's most powerful civilizations. General Kor tried a more direct military approach. His ships performed standard recognition maneuvers near a human patrol group, expecting either a response in kind, or at least some acknowledgement of his fleet's martial capabilities. The human ships continued on their patrol route without deviation, as if the most feared military commander in the galaxy was not worth noticing. When Kor finally opened communications to demand attention, the human patrol leader responded with mild confusion. "Is there some kind of emergency? You've been following us for 6 hours." "I am demonstrating my fleet's capabilities," Kor buzzed angrily. "Oh, okay. They look very capable. Nice formation flying, by the way. Very precise, that was it. No challenge. No display of human military might. No acknowledgement that this might be some kind of test or posturing. Just polite appreciation for good piloting skills. After 2 weeks of observation, the diplomatic fleet had learned almost nothing useful. Humans were polite, efficient, and completely uninterested in galactic politics. They seemed to be building some kind of warning system, but refused to explain what they were warning about or why it required such massive effort. Most frustrating of all, they were clearly capable of joining galactic civilization. Their technology was advanced, their society appeared stable and peaceful, and they showed no signs of the primitive thinking that might make them dangerous neighbors. They simply did not care. 300 years of galactic history, culture, and achievement meant nothing to them. They had their own concerns, their own projects, their own mysterious purposes that apparently did not require outside input or approval. "We are leaving tomorrow," Zekthara announced to his senior staff. "This mission has been a complete failure." "Sir," Dr. Voss said hesitantly, "I have been analyzing the patterns in their construction projects. The placement of these warning beacons follows mathematical principles I do not recognize. Whatever they are preparing for, it is not random." "Does it matter?" Zekthara asked tiredly. "They will not explain, and we cannot force them to. The Council will have to decide whether to leave humanity alone or take more drastic action." As the diplomatic fleet prepared to depart Sol system, none of them noticed the subtle changes beginning to occur around the mysterious warning beacons. Quantum field fluctuations too small for their sensors to detect. Gravitational anomalies that registered as background noise. The countdown was nearly finished and humanity's long vigil was almost over. Soon the galaxy would understand why Earth had chosen isolation, and why sometimes silence is the kindest form of protection. The warning beacons activate. The galactic diplomatic fleet had traveled halfway back to Council space when every communication system in the galaxy suddenly came alive with the same message. It broadcast on every frequency, in every known language, and several that the universal translators could not. "Immediately recognize Admiral Zekthara was reviewing his failure. Report when Lieutenant Kess burst onto the bridge of the Harmony of Worlds. Without permission or ceremony, sir," she gasped, her usually calm demeanor completely shattered. "Sir, you need to hear this immediately." Before Zekthara could respond, the bridge speakers crackled to life with a voice that was clearly human, but speaking in perfect Vraxian dialect. "Danger. Dimensional breach imminent. Evacuation recommended. Maintain distance of 50 or more light-years from Sol system. This message repeats in all known galactic languages. Danger. Dimensional breach imminent." The bridge fell silent except for the steady repetition of the warning. Every officer stared at the speakers as if they might explain themselves. "Communications," Zekthara said slowly. "Confirm the source of this transmission." "Sir, it is coming from everywhere at once," the communications officer replied, his voice shaking. "Every human colony, every human ship, every one of those spherical structures we observed. The entire human network is broadcasting this warning simultaneously." Dr. Voss was already bent over his sensor console, his thin fingers dancing across the controls. "Admiral, I am detecting massive power surges throughout human space. Those warning beacons have activated some kind of quantum communication network. The power levels are unlike anything in our databases. A dimensional breach." Zekthara repeated the words from the warning message. "What does that mean?" "Unknown, sir. Dimensional science is largely theoretical. Our best physicists believe that parallel dimensions exist, but we have no technology capable of accessing them, much less creating breaches between them." The warning continued its endless repetition in language after language. Zekthara heard his own Vraxian dialect, followed by the musical tones of ethereal speech, the clicking sounds of hive communication, and dozens of others. But there were also languages he did not recognize at all. Complex mathematical harmonics and quantum-encoded patterns that seemed to exist outside normal space-time. "Sir," Lieutenant Kess said quietly, "should we return to Sol system?" It was a reasonable question. If there was truly some kind of danger threatening human space, the diplomatic fleet might be able to offer assistance. The Galactic Council had protocols for emergency aid, even to non-member species. But the warning was very specific. Maintain distance of 50 light-years. That suggested the danger was not just local to Earth, but could affect anything within a vast sphere of space around the human colonies. "Communications. Contact the Council immediately," Zekthara ordered. Priority Alpha emergency transmission. They need to know about this. While his crew worked frantically to establish long-range communication with Council Space, Zekthara found himself thinking about the past weeks in Sol System. The humans' casual indifference to galactic politics suddenly seemed much more ominous. Had they been politely trying to get the diplomatic fleet to leave before something terrible happened? The response from the Galactic Council came faster than expected. Counselor Thys appeared on the main screen, her usually serene features twisted with concern. Admiral, we have received the same warning here. Every major population center in the galaxy is hearing this message. What is your assessment of the situation? Unknown, Counselor, Zekthara admitted. Human space appears normal from our current position. We detect no unusual energy signatures, no gravitational anomalies, no signs of whatever threat they are warning about. Our scientists are analyzing the message, Thys said. The languages we do not recognize appear to be communication protocols for species that may not exist yet, or exist in dimensions parallel to our own. The implications are, she paused, searching for words. Disturbing. General Kor's image suddenly appeared beside Thys, his compound eyes gleaming with aggressive tension. This could be a trick, he buzzed angrily. A way to clear galactic space around human territory so they can proceed with whatever they have been planning. To what end? Thys asked. If they wanted us gone, they could simply ask. We have no territorial claims in their space. They could be preparing to launch an attack, Kor insisted. Drive us away with fake warnings, then strike while we are disorganized and distant. Dr. Zan's image joined the growing conference. His large eyes were wider than usual, and his speaking stalks trembled with what might have been fear or excitement. I have been analyzing the quantum signatures of the warning transmission, he said in his quiet voice. The technology required to broadcast simultaneously across the entire galaxy would require power sources we do not possess. The humans appear to have capabilities far beyond what we observed. How far beyond? Zekthara asked. If my calculations are correct, they are manipulating fundamental forces at levels that should be impossible. The energy required to maintain this communication network would normally power our entire civilization for several years. That information sent a chill through the conference participants. A species with technology that advanced could indeed pose a threat to galactic security if they chose to use it aggressively. But there was another possibility that none of them wanted to consider. What if the warning was real? Admiral, Thys said slowly, I want you to maintain your current position and observe human space from maximum sensor range. Do not approach closer than the 50 light-year boundary they have specified. And if nothing happens, Zekthara asked, then we will know the humans are either paranoid or deceptive. But if something does happen... She did not finish the sentence. They all understood the implications. If humanity was powerful enough to detect and warn about a threat that galactic science could not even measure, then the galaxy might owe them a debt of gratitude instead of suspicion. The warning continued its steady repetition as hours passed. Across the galaxy, civilian populations began to panic as the message reached their worlds. Some species interpreted it as a declaration of war. Others saw it as evidence of human superiority. A few began evacuating their border systems as a precaution. Meanwhile, the diplomatic fleet maintained its watch from just outside the 50 light-year boundary. Their sensors showed human space looking completely normal. Ships continued their regular routes. Construction projects proceeded on schedule. The mysterious spherical beacons hung in their orbital formations, broadcasting their warnings but showing no other activity. It looked so peaceful, Lieutenant Kess observed during her watch shift. That is what worries me, Zekthara replied. Either they are completely wrong about this dimensional breach, or they are so confident in their ability to handle it that they see no need to evacuate their own people. Sir, which possibility scares you more? Zekthara considered the question carefully. If humanity was wrong, it would mean they had either made a terrible mistake or deliberately lied to the galaxy for unknown purposes. But if they were right, it would mean they had been preparing for a threat that galactic civilization could not even detect. Much less defend against, I think, he said finally. I am more afraid that they are right. As the third day of warnings began, something changed in the sensor readings from Sol system. Dr. Voss noticed it first, tiny fluctuations in the quantum field measurements around Jupiter's orbit. Admiral, he called from his station, I am detecting anomalous readings near the gas giant. The distortions are too small to identify, but they are definitely there. Could it be equipment malfunction? Sekthara asked hopefully. Negative, sir. All systems are functioning normally. Whatever is happening in human space, it is beginning to register on our instruments. The warning message continued its endless repetition, but now each repetition seemed more urgent, more immediate. The countdown that humanity had been tracking for 3 centuries was nearly finished. Soon, very soon, the galaxy would discover what had kept Earth isolated for so long, and why sometimes the greatest act of courage is to stand guard alone against the dark. The breach opens reality tore open like fabric ripping under impossible strain. Dr. Voss was the first to see it clearly on his sensors. The readings made no sense at first. Massive gravitational distortions appearing from nowhere near Jupiter's orbital path. Then the visual feed from their long-range cameras showed something that would haunt every witness for the rest of their lives. Admiral, Voss's voice cracked with terror. Something is coming through. The tear in spacetime was roughly circular, about 5 kilometers across, and it pulsed with colors that had no names. Through the breach came things that should not exist, entities of pure entropy that devoured light itself as they moved. They looked like living shadows with too many angles, creatures that hurt to look at directly because they existed in more dimensions than normal space could contain. What are those things? Lieutenant Kess whispered, her hands trembling as she tried to maintain sensor focus on the horror unfolding in the distance. I do not know, Admiral Sekthara replied, his voice steady despite the fear that gripped his hearts. And I do not think our language has words for what they are. The creatures, if that word could apply to beings made of twisted space and hungry darkness, spread out from the breach like an infection. They moved toward Jupiter itself, and where they touched the gas giant's swirling clouds, those clouds simply ceased to exist, not destroyed or scattered, but erased from reality as if they had never been. They are consuming matter itself, Dr. Voss reported, his scientific training barely keeping panic from his voice. No, not consuming, unmaking. They touch something and it becomes nothing. More entities poured through the dimensional breach. Dozens, then hundreds of the impossible beings spread throughout the outer solar system. They approached Jupiter's moons with the same devastating effect. Ancient ice and rock that had existed for billions of years simply vanished upon contact. The galactic diplomatic fleet watched in horrified fascination, safe at their distance but witnessing the potential death of an entire star system. These creatures could unmake planets, stars, perhaps entire solar systems if left unchecked. Sir, the communications officer called out, I am receiving priority transmissions from across the galaxy. Every major world is detecting the dimensional disturbance. The Council is demanding immediate reports. Tell them, Sekthara said grimly, that humanity was right to warn us, and pray that they know how to stop what they have warned us about. As if summoned by his words, the human response began. Space around Earth suddenly blazed with light as thousands of hidden structures uncloaked simultaneously. What the galactic observers had thought was empty space revealed itself to be filled with defensive platforms, weapon installations, and ships of designs they had never seen before. By the void, Voss breathed. They have been hiding an entire fleet in plain sight. How is that possible? The human technology was clearly centuries ahead of anything in the galactic databases. Ships appeared from dimensional folds that should have been impossible to create. Weapons charged with energies that made the diplomatic fleet's sensors scream warnings about radiation levels that could not exist. But most impressive of all was the coordination. Thousands of human vessels moved as one, each ship taking a precise position in formations that covered the entire solar system. It was like watching a single organism respond to threat, every part working in perfect harmony with every other part. The warning beacons that had puzzled the galactic observers revealed their true purpose. Each sphere suddenly projected a barrier of pure energy that connected to its neighbors, creating a containment network around the dimensional breach. The entities of entropy struck the barriers and recoiled, unable to pass through the quantum walls humanity had prepared. They were ready, Lieutenant Kess said in amazement. They knew exactly what was coming and when it would arrive. The battle that followed was unlike anything in recorded galactic history. The human fleet did not simply fight the dimensional invaders. They systematically dismantled them with weapons that seemed to manipulate the fundamental forces of reality itself. Beam weapons fired coherent streams of organized matter that imposed structure on the chaotic entities, forcing them into forms that normal space could contain and destroy. Missile weapons carried warheads that exploded with precise mathematical patterns, creating zones of enforced physics that made the impossible beings possible to kill. Most remarkable of all were the dimensional anchors, devices that reached into parallel realities and locked the local space-time into a stable configuration. The creatures that had emerged from the breach suddenly found themselves subject to normal physical laws, vulnerable to conventional destruction. The human ships moved through the battle zone with calculated precision. They targeted the largest entities first, then worked systematically through the smaller ones. There was no heroic charging or desperate last stands, just efficient, methodical elimination of threats according to a plan that had clearly been prepared in advance. "Admiral," Dr. Voss called out, "the quantum readings are stabilizing. The dimensional breach is beginning to collapse." On the visual displays, they could see human ships positioning themselves around the tear in spacetime. They fired not weapons, but some kind of repair beams that began stitching reality back together at the quantum level. The breach grew smaller and smaller as the human engineers worked to seal the wound between dimensions. Within 6 hours, it was over. The last of the entropy entities had been destroyed or driven back through the collapsing breach. The tear in spacetime sealed itself with a flash of released energy that briefly outshone Sol itself. Normal space reasserted its dominance over the outer solar system. The human fleet began powering down their weapons and returning to whatever hidden bases they had emerged from. Within another hour, the solar system looked exactly as it had before the crisis began. The only evidence that anything had happened was the absence of several of Jupiter's smaller moons, casualties of the early moments before humanity's defenses could fully activate. Then came a single transmission from Earth, broadcast on the same quantum network that had carried the warnings. Dimensional breach sealed. Threat eliminated. Normal operations resuming. Thank you for maintaining safe distance as requested. The message was delivered in the same polite, matter-of-fact tone that Commander Chen had used weeks earlier, as if humanity had just completed routine maintenance rather than saving the entire galaxy from entities that could have unmade reality itself. "Sir," Lieutenant Kess said quietly, "what do we do now?" Admiral Zekathera stared at the displays showing human space returning to normal. Trade ships were already resuming their routes. Construction crews were going back to work on their mysterious projects. Children were probably returning to play in the observation domes of space stations. It was as if nothing had happened, as if the most important battle in galactic history was just another day's work for humanity. "Now," Zekathera said slowly, "we send a very different report to the Council, and we pray they are wise enough to understand what they have just witnessed. The galaxy slept peacefully once again, protected by guardians they had dismissed as antisocial and primitive. But some truths once revealed could never be forgotten. Humanity had not avoided galactic civilization out of arrogance or fear. They had shouldered the burden of protecting everyone else, alone and without recognition, for 3 centuries. The question now was whether the galaxy was wise enough to understand the gift they had been given and humble enough to be grateful for it. The truth revealed. 3 days after the dimensional breach closed, humanity sent a message that surprised everyone who received it. After 3 centuries of polite refusals and bureaucratic delays, Earth officially invited the Galactic Council to send a diplomatic mission to Sol system. Admiral Zekathera found himself back in the same conference room aboard the Harmony of Worlds, but everything felt different now. The mysterious warning beacons still hung in their orbital formations around Earth, but their purpose was no longer a puzzle. The humans who had seemed indifferent to galactic politics were revealed as the guardians who had been protecting everyone. "Else, Admiral Chen will see you now," said the aide who escorted them from the shuttle bay to the meeting room deep within Earth's primary orbital station. Admiral Sarah. Chen looked exactly like her sister who had commanded the patrol ship weeks earlier. The same efficient uniform, the same calm expression, the same air of quiet competence. But when she spoke, her words carried the weight of 3 centuries of hidden knowledge. "Gentlemen," Ladies and honored beings of various classifications, she began with a slight smile. I apologize for the delays in arranging this meeting. As you have recently observed, we have been somewhat busy preparing for other matters. Zekathara cleared his throat carefully. Admiral Chen, on behalf of the Galactic Council, I must first express our gratitude for your actions in containing the dimensional breach. Your intervention saved countless lives across the galaxy. Thank you, Chen replied simply, though I should point out that we did not intervene. We were already in position. We have been in position for quite some time. Counselor Theiss leaned forward, her ethereal form shimmering with curiosity. How long have you known about this threat? We detected the first signs of dimensional instability 297 years ago, Chen answered. Our initial calculations suggested the breach would occur sometime in the next 300 years. We have been preparing ever since. The number hit the assembled diplomats like a physical blow. Humanity had known about the threat almost from the moment they achieved faster-than-light travel. They had spent their entire existence as a spacefaring species preparing for this one moment. But why did you not warn us? General Kor demanded, his compound eyes gleaming with frustrated anger. Why did you not ask for help? Chen's expression grew serious. General, what would have happened if we had announced to the galaxy that reality was going to tear open and release entropy entities that could unmake matter itself? We would have prepared defenses, Kor insisted, would you? Chen asked quietly. Or would there have been panic? Mass evacuations? Species abandoning their homeworlds? Wars fought over the safe systems far from the projected breach point? She touched a control on the table, and a holographic display showed the galaxy with Earth at its center. Colored zones spread outward showing the calculated danger areas if the dimensional breach had not been contained. Our models suggested that if the entities had escaped Sol system, they would have consumed approximately 60% of the galaxy within 50 years. Chen continued. We could not risk the possibility that panic or interference might compromise our preparations. Dr. Zan spoke for the first time since entering the room. The technologies you demonstrated during the battle, dimensional anchoring, quantum barrier generation, entropy reversal weapons, these are centuries ahead of our best theoretical work. How did you develop them? Out of necessity, Chen replied. When you know that the survival of all known life depends on your success, you find ways to push beyond what should be possible. Every human colony, every research station, every university has been working on some aspect of the defense network for 3 centuries. Your entire civilization, Theiss said slowly, has been focused on this one task. Yes, Chen confirmed. We could not allow ourselves the luxury of normal development. While other species explored art, philosophy, and culture, we studied dimensional physics and entropy reversal. While others enjoyed peace and prosperity, we prepared for war against forces that should not exist. The weight of that sacrifice settled over the room like a heavy blanket. An entire species had given up the normal pleasures of civilization to protect everyone else from a threat they could not even speak about. But now it is over, Zekathara said hopefully. The breach is sealed. The threat is ended. You can finally join galactic civilization properly. Chen's smile was sad and knowing. Admiral, I appreciate your optimism, but this was just the first breach. Our calculations show at least 12 more potential breach points throughout the galaxy over the next 1,000 years. The work is far from finished. That statement caused several diplomats to make sounds of distress in their various languages. The revelation that there might be more of these catastrophic events was almost too much to process. However, Chen continued, we no longer need to carry this burden alone. Now that the galaxy has seen the threat, we can begin sharing our knowledge, teaching other species the technologies needed to detect and contain dimensional instabilities, building a true galactic defense network instead of relying on humanity's resources alone. She stood and walked to the large window that looked out over Earth's blue and green surface. For 3 centuries, we have been the silent guardians. We watched over the galaxy's sleep while knowing that we could never truly rest ourselves. We missed the great conferences and cultural exchanges because we were building weapons to fight enemies you could not imagine. We seemed antisocial because we could not explain why we needed to stay focused on our work. And now? Theiss asked. Now we can finally join the community we have been protecting, Chen said, turning back to face them. We can share our art, our music, our literature, all the things we set aside in order to be ready for this day. We can learn from your cultures and add our voices to the great conversation of galactic civilization. But the warning beacons remain active, Dr. Zan observed. Chen nodded. They do. And they will continue to monitor dimensional stability throughout human space and beyond. We are still guardians, but we no longer need to be silent ones. She returned to her seat and looked each diplomat in the eye. The galaxy can sleep peacefully tonight knowing that someone is watching. But now you know who is watching and why. The next time we send warnings, you will understand that they come from knowledge earned through sacrifice, and they should be heeded without question. As the meeting concluded and the diplomats prepared to return to their ships, Admiral Zekthara found himself thinking about all the assumptions the galaxy had made about humanity. They had seemed arrogant, but they had been focused. They had appeared antisocial, but they had been protective. They had looked primitive, but they had been more advanced than anyone realized. The warning beacons continued their quiet vigil as the diplomatic fleet prepared to return to Council space. But now their message had changed. Instead of emergency warnings about dimensional breaches, they broadcast a simple statement in all known galactic languages. Protected by Earth Defense Force. Sleep well, Galaxy. We are watching. It was a promise and a comfort rolled into one. The lonely vigil was over, but the protection would continue. Humanity had finally taken its place in galactic civilization, but they had done so as the guardians everyone else never knew they needed. As Earth faded into the distance behind them, the diplomats carried with them a new understanding of what it meant to be human, not the aggressive, primitive species they had imagined, but the ones who had sacrificed their own development to ensure everyone else could continue theirs. The galaxy would never look at the quiet star system called Sol the same way again. And perhaps in time, other species would learn to carry part of the burden that humanity had shouldered alone for so long. But until that day came, Earth would continue to stand guard against the dark spaces between dimensions, watching over the dreams of 1,000 worlds. The stars shone a little brighter knowing that somewhere, someone was keeping them safe.